Welcome back to the New York Sports Exchange, episode number 114. And we have our hockey preview with Jake and Matt, nearly 2 hours long. 2 hours long. So here's the plan. We're just going to have the hockey preview. Know what I saw. We're going to talk all football, all baseball for Thursday's episode. So we're just going to go into it right away. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him, you love him, Jake Zaretsky and Matt Mugno. Here it is. The second full season, we'll call it third straight year, because who's counting? Jake and Matt are back with us. Our long-awaited hockey preview is here. Matt, it's been a while. I think exactly last year you were with us. So a lot of stuff happened. So explain the call, man, because this is the infamous call. Whenever I'm bored with myself, I just want to hear the call one more time. And lately I've been doing it. I've been hearing the call, and it's just explain to the viewers that don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'll summarize it real quick. So I had to make a decision, right? I was a film guy too. So a year ago, exactly this last week, I had to make a big decision in my life. It was like, do I do the capstone film project that would be a $15,000 to $20,000 film that you create, goes on the circuit, you kind of travel with it, Brooklyn picks it up, you play it in their film festival. Oh, Colorado picks it up, you play it in their film festival. Or do I kind of take the risk and I don't do that capstone? I write a script, full-length screenplay in class, and then on the side, outside of class, beat report and broadcast for two different clubs, student orgs at the school. So that's the route I go, because obviously hockey guy. So, all year they play the Ivies, Quinnipiac. The Ivies didn't play for 2 years because of COVID. So last year seemed like a little bit of a cakewalk at points. It was a lot of man hours. It was probably like 7 hours, a lot of Friday and Saturday nights. So, it was a little bit to balance at school while I was doing my own podcast and stuff. So it was a crazy year. And then now comes end of March. They're in their regionals, which was pretty cool because it was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So only like 30 minutes from the school. And they win that, which was a big surprise, especially over Ohio State. I'm selected. I called the game actually in Lake Placid, which I thought was going to be the peak of my year, and that was their conference tournament. So that was awesome because you're standing where Al Michaels stood, right? Like that was crazy. Like you feel the ghosts in the building, it's a legendary spot. It's like snowing, beautiful. But that's like early March. They lose in the semifinal, like upset. So I'm like, all right, their season's over. Well, lo and behold, they still had a bid for the NCAA tournament. They get in to the Frozen Four. I'm selected to go. So now I'm calling the game play by play in Amalie Arena in Tampa. And it was cool because we kind of, obviously I've reported on the team the whole year. So in the press conferences, we got to ask a lot of questions, this, that. Leading up to it though, they beat Michigan. That game was crazy. I thought again, you're like, all right, they beat Michigan. All right, we'll see what they do against Minnesota. They defeat Minnesota overtime, right? Have that call. That was the peak ever. It was on MSG 150. And then a few months later, I'm entering the real world, and it's weird coming out of school. And then pick up now. I'm working the hockey news. It's part-time with practices and games. So thank you. Yeah. So it was
Go, Matt.
It's been a crazy few months. That was about a half a year ago now. And then it's funny you bring that up because then the banner raising was the other night. Jake was there. He's in the managing staff. So
I didn't know they were playing Boston College.
Yeah, and it was crazy. I've never seen the arena that packed ever.
It was sick.
God. Pearl River stand up. Wasn't it CJ against Drew, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Two Pearl River natives in the house. I tweeted out a nice video of them in warm-ups. I got some likes from the whole Fortescue family. Yeah, the whole Fortescue family was involved in that tweet. The whole family wanted to get together to show me some love. So that was nice.
Oh yeah, Pearl River's a hockey town for once.
Oh
yeah. Matt, I do also want to mention this happened over the summer, but I wanted to see your reaction to when I told you this. I got a very special follow on Twitter over the summer. It was your mother. I guess your mom's a fan. Your mom's a fan.
She keeps up with everything. She keeps tabs. It's funny. I always see like my dad. He'll comment at like people I work with, and it's the best thing ever because like that they see it and they see the last name. So yeah, Dan, that means you're in the inner circle now. You're a trusted source.
Let's fucking go.
Let's go, Dan. That's big.
That's huge. Moving up in the world.
I'll show it on the camera. I was waiting to follow her back.
You got receipts.
Now I
wow. Now follows back. Wow.
I needed the live input of it. I needed the live input. Wanted to, I'm a foxhole guy. Foxhole guy. Show my spirit. Show my spirit.
That's great.
So let's get it started. NHL preview. We are going to give our top 3 in each division, 2 wildcard teams, Stanley Cup champion, and then we are going to go Hart Trophy, Calder, Vezina, Norris. And then we have the Selke and the Lindsay, right?
Yeah, we got a couple sprinkled in there.
Yeah, we got a couple more. Yeah. I also added teams. I also added teams on like the outside looking in, like ones that like just missed it. So if anyone wants to jump in on that. So let's get it started with the Metropolitan, possibly the toughest division in the league right now. Jake, how about you get it started? Who do you got at number 1? Or who's your top 3?
I guess
put it that way.
Well, before I get into that, I do want to just hopefully get it better this year after my absolute catastrophe. That was last year's prediction, predicting the Bruins to miss the playoffs, have their worst statistical season ever, and for the Blue Jackets to make the playoffs. But looking ahead to this season, I think that there's a lot of written in the sand kind of stuff going on. I caught up a lot on off-season moves, and you can kind of tell what direction teams are going in just based on who they're signing. And I think we're going to see a pretty big repeat of what we saw last year in the Metro Division in terms of where the teams are going to be. I have Carolina in first place. I think a lot of people are going to be between them and New Jersey, with some of my close friends picking the Rangers as well. I just think Carolina, they continue to get better as the days go on. They're built for the regular season, if some may say, but a lot of people are taking them to be President's Trophy, winners of the Metro, whatever, and then they're having them eliminated Eastern Conference semifinal or conference final, whatever it may be. So they're my team for the Metro. They brought in Michael Bunting. They signed Dmitry Orlov. They brought back Tony DeAngelo. And their only loss was Shane Gostisbehere, who a lot of people speculated was going to leave after the season, and rightfully so, he did. Their team, their core is really strong. If they can stay healthy, which they weren't able to stay healthy last year in a lot of departments, we could see them being a 115-point team, maybe even 120-point team as the season gets into the spring. So, yeah, for the Metro, that's my winner. I don't know if anybody else has a different team, maybe New Jersey, whatever.
I went different. I have the Devils taking first place in the Metro. I mean, The acquisition of Tyler Toffoli is huge. They get rid of some guys, but I feel like that those top 3 lines, I think they're probably the most skilled team in the NHL. It's a big question with goalie if they're going to go with Vanacek. Are they going to go with Akira Schmid? I think if they do it like Carolina, how they do it with Anderson and Ronta, I still think that they'll be okay. I just think that this team takes the extra step and they go for it. The first 2 rounds will run through Newark, New Jersey, which is disgusting to say, but I that's just what I think.
Yeah, and then Tim, I want to kind of ask you a little bit because I know you're an Islander fan, and I know that the expectation for this season is very, very similar to how it was last year because the team is very similar. But just kind of looking at the Devils roster, to go into the offseason and do the things that they did where it was re-signing Meyer, re-signing Bratt, and now all of a sudden Tom Fitzgerald puts them in a position to be buyers in pretty much every facet of the season, whether it's the offseason, trade deadline, whatever. It's kind of scary as a Ranger fan. And I think a lot of people are starting to paint this picture of, Rangers, Devils for the next 3, 4, 5 years. But Tim, I mean, where do you stand with the Islanders now? How do you feel about this team? Do you think that they can be a cup contender this year? Do you think that the window is small? Do you think that it's big? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, here's my thing. Is they're getting older and they don't really like to go out and get young players. So the window's obviously closing a little bit. But with that being said, I look at this team right now as they're never going to be a favorite. They're going to be a gritty team, but they're a team that once they're in, they're really hard to beat.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it last year, that Carolina series. I know they wore them down a little bit. It went to 6 games, but they were banged up. Barzal's first game back was that playoff series. Obviously, it's tough to get any momentum build up, especially when you get a new guy in his line. So, the cards didn't align in that situation. But when you play, and you look before that, before the Barzal injury, the power play was at 33%. The penalty kill was up to almost 90 at that point. They were scoring a lot more efficiently. There was a lot more offense. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year. I think, with Horvat and Barzal kind of playing together now for an offseason, they get to work together a little bit. I know they're trying to look for a winger on that line. I don't know if it's going to be Holmstrom or Wallstrom, but we'll figure that out. They just need a shooter. Those two will create. I really do think they're going to have a good year. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat, and I think Sorokin's going to have a Vezina caliber season. So I think they're going to be really hard to get out once they're in.
That's a perfectly way to put it. I think that the Islanders really need to play to their strengths, and that's really on the back end. I don't think we saw the full potential of Pelech and Pulak last year. I think that they really kind of struggled out of the gate. Kind of a little bit of a side effect of last season and the postseason. And if they could stay healthy and if they could actually get contributions from their lineup, which they haven't gotten in the past, they can be a threat for maybe even third place in the Metro, wild card team, whatever. I think a lot of people are split with the Islanders just because they're almost considered a bubble team, but I could see them definitely having a couple of 6-7 game win streaks, getting hot, having some home stands, because playing in UBS is tough. You see it in the Rangers.
It's loud.
Islanders
It's really loud.
It's tough. They've kind of brought the barn into UBS, which is great. But to stop talking about the Islanders and to stop gassing up Tim, Stan, Matt, and my fellow Ranger fans, I guess, where do we stand? I think that there's a real shot that the Rangers are going to look the same way that they did last year, where there's not a lot of care about the regular season early on. They're going to be very playoff oriented to start the season. And then once they're okay, we need to win games, they're going to start winning games. I could say till I'm blue in the face that I could see them being second place, having home ice advantage against either Carolina or New Jersey, whoever it may be. But I'd love to hear your guys' take. I think that they made some great moves in the offseason. We saw Eric Gustafsson play really, really well in the preseason too. That's another promising thing. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about where the Rangers are going to be and what the expectation is for the season.
I'll let the guy that actually gets paid to cover the team go first.
That's good.
All right, so I'll give you guys my division. It's the same as Zaretsky: Carolina, New Jersey, New York. No hate, Tim, though. I'll talk about the Islanders when we get there. I think everything everyone said dead on. I think with the Rangers specifically, Blake Wheeler, first 2 preseason games, be honest, I wasn't impressed. And I thought his training camp, the skating day, he was with Trocheck, Kako, I believe Phil Heedle in the second group. So there was 3 groups, Group A, B, C. And he was part of B. And he looked like he has the stride, but he looked like he was well conditioned. That impressed me for 37 years old. I think he picked up his play, and I think that impressed me. I think Gustafsson, he does that little head fake move at the blue line. He's great with zone exits. He's impressed me. I think, Jake, like you said, I think those bargain bin moves, and I think for everyone here can agree, that's probably what's going to work better for them. Where I'll disagree is I think what I will say is from the mentality, Vincent Trocheck had no problem really laying down the law. Even Wheeler had mentioned it too. Laviolette, he's really open with a lot, compared to Gallant. My boy Sam Rosen, he was I like Gallant, but it's the business. I get the sense that they were not concerned with, as Jake mentioned, they weren't really concerned with a lot coming into the season, coming off of that conference final run. And I think this year, the point of everything is there's going to be an adjustment to the system, but it's more about we got to play playoff hockey now, and we have to compete now because we'll be better off when the playoffs comes. And I do think what happened was they folded to New Jersey in games 3, 5, and 7 because they weren't really built to work all year. Like it was like, we'll get there and then we'll get there. And I think something like Vincent Trocheck had no problem. It was like Dan Rose, like in the, like, talking to him, he was like, he said to Dan Rose, and he was like, this year's a no BS mentality. And like,
you can curse, say it.
yeah, I think that's just something that obviously with the Rangers, I don't think they're going to be a team that storms and takes over the Metro, but I think that's exactly where you like them. Look, a decade ago, AV comes in, it's his first year. They go 1-5 in the preseason. They're not really good until the Stadium Series games. They turn it around, but they're still third in the division, and then they go to the Cup final. You have the goaltender, you have the defenseman like you did in Lundqvist, McDonough. At that point, agents are already installed, but you also had the forwards. You had the pickup in St. Louis. You had the depth guys like a Brian Boyle. You have the ingredients that are very similar. I won't say it's the same, and I think that's where I have faith in the team this year. And I think obviously Carolina's a wagon, and I think New Jersey's only going to get better. Like I looked up the other day, Jesper Bratt, 25, Timo Meyer's young, Jack Hughes is our age. So they also have that top six that's dangerous and young. So,
and they're fast. They are real fast.
Actually terrible. I remember the days.
That's my take on the Metro.
Yeah, I remember the days junior, senior year of high school just being like, so joyous with my fellow Ranger and Islander fans. Like my two best friends back home are both like diehard Islanders fans, and we would be frolicking through the hallways because the Devils just sucked. Like it was great. Everything was so good like 4 years ago, and then they get some draft lottery luck.
Yeah, all of a sudden now they have a ton of fans who just weren't there before.
Oh yeah,
I don't want to get into that.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say with the Rangers though too, I love I love basically everything what Matt said. I like the Blake Wheeler pickup. I know he looked pretty slow in those 2 preseason games, but I think that he'll be, once he gets matched up with the right line, I think that he'll thrive. Gustafsson, I love Eric
awesome.
Gustafsson. I think he's probably going to be the X factor of this team. I know we've been saying it for the last 3 years, but it all depends on the play of the kids, I think.
Yeah, it's their time to step up.
Yeah, because Lafreniere, I think, is on a short. I would assume that he's on a short leash because if someone's looking for a trade target, if we're looking for someone at the deadline, he might be the one that gets shipped.
And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I was saying on my pod the other day, I think that it's a 2-year contract. It's a 1-year contract, and the second year is just really if he doesn't perform. I think something that is I think's changed the perspective on fans. And I know the preseason doesn't matter, and some fans, like when I say this, we all know where we're coming from with how much stock you put in it. But part of the stock is to see how players developed in the offseason. Have they changed their habits? Have they changed? And I think something that has disappointed is the play of Lafreniere. Like Kakko is poised for, I think, 50 points. Like out of the two, I have more faith in where Kakko stands. He's going to be playing some time with Mika Kreider, might see power play 2 time. It seems like Laviolette's going to try and work a little more of a power play 2 than just having that one power play, which is strong, but I understand the purpose of why he would do that. I think Kakko is more poised. I think, like you guys are saying, though, like Lafreniere, I think that they're going to look at a trade target. They're going to look at Steven Stamkos. They're going to look at Matt Zuccarello, and I think he's going to be a piece in that.
Elias Pettersson.
Oh,
I don't know if they can take his contract.
Wait till he gets to the Western Conference.
Yeah, Stan. I want you to start us off with the Atlantic Division here. I think. I think that the Eastern Conference is the biggest anomaly. I think both are. The NHL is so. I think I just want to touch on this really fast. The NHL has maybe 3 bottom feeders. Maybe 3.
Yeah,
it's San Jose, Montreal, and Chicago.
There's no
Chicago's Bedard.
Team.
Anaheim.
I think Anaheim's in there.
I think they were the worst hockey team I've ever watched last year. I think their plus minus was at minus 112. They were horrendous defensively.
Pretty much every other team in the NHL has at least a chance at the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
At least.
I agree, Jay. I think something that the league has tried for years is the build through the draft, right? They've hyped up the draft since probably the Crosby time, but really the last 5 years pushing it, advertising. The way they market it, right, is the only way to get talents through the draft. And they're trying to do that so it competes with the NFL, NBA draft, right? With American
Yeah.
sport. Smart strategy on the NHL's end. And on top of that, Jake, like you're saying, they're pushing, the parity. And it's coming to the point where the parity is taken over because you look at every team and you're like, wow, that team has studs. What it really comes down to is the depth. And I think that's going to be important when we talk about the rest of the divisions, especially the Atlantic.
Yeah, let's hear it, Stan.
So, top 3 for the Atlantic. Number 1, your President's Trophy winner, Toronto Maple Leafs. Number 2, I got Florida.
Yep.
Number 2, I got Florida. And number 3, I have the Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, wow. Baby.
Okay.
Buffalo.
Wow.
I'm going to be saying this a lot. Buffalo and a bunch of other teams that I will name later are going to be fun to watch. Buffalo is going to be insanely fun to watch. Dahlin, Devin Levi, Tage Thompson. The list goes on. I think that this team is. I think that this is going to be like the first time that the hockey world's really going to be like the casual hockey world, as I like to call it, where they're going to be exposed to Buffalo Sabres hockey, and I'm very excited to watch them. For Toronto, they upgraded with a lot of veterans. Tyler Bertuzzi, they get Ryan Reeves, Max Domi. Your only hope, really, for this season is, well, not only to, win a Stanley Cup, obviously, but you hope that William Nylander gets extended. Because if he gets traded at the deadline, I mean, he's not going to go for nothing, and you can definitely get something out of him, but I feel like that loss is just huge for a team that's looking to win a Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, you gotta find a way to, if Nylander goes in early March or whatever the deadline is, I think it's February or something like that. If he goes around that time, you're going to need somebody to get 15, maybe 12 goals in that late stretch, and then obviously produce in the playoffs. Toronto is my pick for the Atlantic as well. I just think that they're built right now. I think they have a really good team. They added some really good guys. They lost Michael Bunting, young promising forward, Alex Kerfoot as well, Ryan O'Reilly. But like you said, Tyler Bertuzzi, just like he's just essentially like a really big piece of glue where you could put him anywhere and he's just going to make the other two players good. And so he's almost like a Swiss Army knife. He could be physical. He could score. Really good acquisition for them. Max Domi as well, very gritty scoring forward. I think it's great. But to save my own rear end here, I have two different picks for the second and third place spot for the Atlantic.
Okay.
I have the Boston Bruins in second place, despite losing Patrice Bergeron, Tyler Bertuzzi, Nick Foligno, Taylor Hall, David Krejci, Connor Clifton, Dimitrov. I mean, those are all players that you could put either. Yeah. And those are just their key losses. Those are players that you could put either in your top 4 on D or your top 6 on offense. Like, there's no doubt about it. They bring Milan Lucic back. They get Kevin Shattenkirk to play their bottom 4, and then they get James Van Riemsdyk too. So Boston is a team that has arguably the best goalie duo in the NHL. They still have Charlie McAvoy. They have Hampus Lindholm, who is looking like a Norris candidate for about half the season. And they still have scoring on offense. I don't know how Pavel Zacha is going to play as a first-line center. We could see him have 30 goals. We could also see him have 20. So you never know how that's going to go. But I am just going to save my rear end here and say that the Bruins are second. They could be third. It's interchangeable in between the third team that I have, which is the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, they're just so skilled. Yeah. The only reason, and you know what's so funny is that the only reason I don't have them higher is because
he's out early. Is that the same reason?
Yeah, and that's the only thing. But Tampa is so skilled that they can get through it. They signed Connor Sheary. They signed now Ranger killer Tyler Mott. You know for a fact that the second that they play the Rangers, he's gonna have a goal. He's gonna have an assist, and he's not just gonna have like Rangers are up 3-0 and he scores a goal in the third period with 11 minutes left. He's gonna have a game-winning goal with 2 minutes left in the third period in a 1-1 game.
Yeah.
So they get Luke Glendening, very solid defenseman, and they lose a couple big guys. Ross Colton, just solid bottom 6 forward. They lose Alex Killorn, longtime Tampa Bay Lightning member. He went to Anaheim. Corey Perry, just stingy. Patrick Mooner as well, but they still have elite talent. They still have Steven Stamkos, who is definitely going to stay with the Lightning. I know he's a trade candidate, but they're going to make it work. It's the Lightning, John Cooper. You got great guys in the front office there. I see Stamkos staying there for at least another 3 or 4 years. Nikita Kucherov, arguably best winger in the NHL. Victor Hedman's going to be he's gonna have to be a
All
Norris
right,
candidate.
Jake, get who's on the lineup, bro.
I'm sorry. Listen, I mean, what do you want me to do? Tampa's good.
They're good. No, I agree with
They're
you. They're a good
good,
team.
but,
I
like-
agree with you. I'm with you. I have the Leafs 1. I have Tampa 2 and the Panthers 3. I don't have the Bruins or the Sabres making the playoffs. I wrestled with it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm with you at Tampa. I think Nick Paul's going to have a huge year. I think Braden Point's going to have a huge jump in numbers, probably like a 100-point season. He's way underrated in his two-way game. This team's loaded through and through. They've done it before. They're going to continue to do it. And with the Panthers, I think people who have them at like a 1 or 2 seed, recency bias is kicking in. This team, as I know they did make it to the Cup, but you got to think they were a wild card team sneaking in. They weren't great in the regular season last year.
Because they were hurt
bit.
all year.
I don't care getting healthy. I'm telling you, other teams get better and better and
They
better.
won the President's Trophy. I'm with Dan here. It's 2-on-2 here. I'm
They
gonna
won
go.
the President's Trophy 2
They
years
won the
ago.
President's Trophy by miles 2 years ago. Lose to Tampa. Then the next year they go to the Stanley Cup
They had
final.
2 different star players that year. Barker, they lost Huberdeau. They replaced Huberdeau with Kachuk. I understand it's different. It's a different aspect of the game. But that team was
Matty
built to just
Tkachuk
win in the regular season.
better. He's so
Yeah,
much.
as a two-way player, he's great. He's great in the postseason. But
I know. Okay, but
I almost have Florida out of the playoffs.
I'm with you,
Florida
Jake.
second
I
in
don't
the
see. I don't
division.
see the hype on them.
I have Florida second in the division. I'll just go off and say it. I mean, I know that they keep that young core. I know they traded Anthony Duclair, but they bring in a much needed veteran presence. Evan Rodriguez, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's huge for that team. The play of
OEL's been
Sergei
done for 3
Bobrovsky.
years.
Who cares? Shut the fuck up, Tim. Sergei Bobrovsky's hopefully going to have a big year. If this team, it might be a slow start. I know we were talking about injuries. I know it might be a slow start because Montour and Ekblad are hurt. But
Bob didn't even have a starting job to finish the year. I mean, he wasn't good in the regular season either. He just picked it up in the playoffs.
That's all you need. He's that type of player.
That's all you need, exactly. But
then why do you have them so high in the playoffs if he's not going to perform in the regular season? He had like an 890 save percentage last year.
It's a good team. It's a good team. They're not gonna. It's not gonna take all 82 games for them to make the playoffs. That's my point. It's not gonna be an uphill battle for them.
Fair.
Did not think we'd be fighting over Florida Panther hockey.
Well, I mean, I was glazing Tampa. I'm sorry. I gotta.
I'm with you. I'll glaze Tampa. I think Tampa's elite, so I will glaze them with you gladly.
All right.
No.
So
you know what? I think even though I got my ranking here is Toronto, Tampa, Florida, I'll say I'm not impressed by Tampa at all.
I'm not either.
You mentioned stars, cup wins, yes. Every team in the NHL is talent, Jake. You mentioned Kucherov, best winger. Name a team, they got a winger. It's a winger league. It's just like the NFL with receiving now. Yeah, the Raiders, my Raiders, on Monday Night Football have Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. You know what? They don't have anything else. They don't have a safety. They don't have a lineman. The Tampa Bay Lightning's replacement for Ross Colton is Mikey Isamont. So,
hey, he's good. Hey, he's got good analytics.
No, but you know what, Jake? There's so much talent in the NHL. There's so many grinders. Johnny Brodzinski just fell through waivers. You can have players like that, yes. I just don't think you win this. Listen, we're not even talking about Stanley Cup right now, but Toronto did the right thing. I think they're poised to take that step, like you mentioned, with Willie Nylander. I think Willie Nylander is going to be key because I think he's their best postseason performer, which pains me to say Willie Nylander. I was so against the fact that he sat out half the season for money, wanted $2 million more than he got, then settled for what they originally gave him. That was a joke. Anyway, I don't know where the hatred's coming out of Florida. We're going to go right back to that.
Yeah, I'm going to Florida.
And let me speak my piece and we can discourse. Bobrovsky, I know. He ebbs and flows. Bobrovsky, he'll have 2 seasons where he doesn't play well, then he has 2 seasons where he's the best goalie in the NHL. John Quick, Henrik Lundqvist, Carey Price don't have 2 Vezinas in their repertoire. You know who has that on their resume? Sergei Bobrovsky. He's a player when he's hot, he is the best goalie in the league. It was the same as Ben Bishop in his days in Tampa. I will say, I think Florida's ceiling is second in the division. I think their floor is the last wild card. But I do think that they had things that went on last season during the regular season that did hinder them. They won a President's Trophy. The Washington Capitals from 2016 to 2019 were so good. And they won a President's Trophy. And in that time frame, won a Stanley Cup. So I do think that when you look at teams that are top in the division, Sometimes that's what it comes down to. And we can't talk about the Islanders and the Rangers doing well with their specific situations and not give credit to the fact with the same narratives that the Florida Panthers could succeed too. We talked about the Rangers with offseason acquisitions. Well, they didn't go out and get a stud, but they do have Panarin, right? A player like that, or a player like Zibanejad, or for the Islanders, a player like Horvat, a player like Barzal. Well, you can't say that like, oh, but Matt Tkachuk's just a different type of player. Like they don't have Huberdeau anymore, but they do have Sasha Barkov. He went crazy. I mean, the in between the legs goal, that was crazy. They march to the Cup final. They lose to Vegas. Like that whole thing happens. You're moving into another season. Now you get a full season of Brandon Montour, right? They were really banged up at the end of last year. You got healthy players, and I think Matt Tkachuk, his game is going to take over. Like that brand of hockey is what's going to wear on the other teams in the division. They don't need to be second or third in the division. Let Toronto win the division. But they took Toronto in 5 games easy last year. And that's why Toronto had to make adjustments. So I do think their brand is what I think sells me on Florida.
I hate to burst your bubble, Matt, about you with the healthiness about Florida, but Montour and Ekblad are both not playing the season opener, both recovering from off-season surgery. But
yeah,
they got to get healthy.
I said it was
They gotta
going to
get
be
healthy.
close.
Yeah, when you're talking about it's November, then it's like, game time. I know they had surgeries. I think Montour had like 2 shoulder surgery, like a double shoulder surgery. Listen, you give that time, and they'll be back. I also think the coaching has to do with that too, with Paul Maurice. But we can move on.
Okay. To our wild card teams in the East. I'll start with mine. I'm shocked that the Pittsburgh Penguins have not been brought up yet. I have them taking the first wild card spot. They get Erik Karlsson. They bring in Kyle Dubas. He makes a questionable decision signing Tristan Jarry to that big deal. I think that Pittsburgh does make the playoffs, but definitely, the age of Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin are definitely going to be a question. My second wild card team is going to be Boston. I have them in the second wild card, which means I have the Islanders and the Lightning not making the playoffs.
I was going to say that means the Lightning are out of your picture.
Yes.
I just look.
And Ottawa.
I don't buy that.
Look. I mean, if we're talking odd team out, for me, it's Pittsburgh and the Islanders.
Okay.
So I mean, if we have my top 3 considering Toronto, Boston, Tampa, and then Carolina, New Jersey, NYR in the top 6 for the East, I have Buffalo, which Stan, I agree. I think that this is their first playoff appearance in the last 13 years. They have so much top-end talent, so much talent on the back end. Devon Levi, whatever you want to call it, Gene Company, anything you want. He's a stud. He's going to play really well. He could definitely take them into the playoffs. Don't know how he's going to be in the playoffs, but I could see a Jake Ottinger type performance. I have them in the second wild card, followed up by Florida in the first wild card.
Okay.
I see Buffalo really taking that next step. I see Dahlin being a Norris candidate, top 3 this season after signing that extension. He could easily have 65, 70 points this year, so he's going to be huge on the back end for them. They got a ton of other great guys on that back end, Matthias Samuelsson, and then the forward core, as we all know, just so studded up front. Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Dylan Cousins. I mean, you name it. They're young, they're fast, they're really exciting. So that's my East wild card. It's going to be fun, and the East is tight. Like, it's going to be probably within 5, 6, 7 points between Pittsburgh, New York, Ottawa.
Ottawa.
The Capitals might be in there too. Detroit might be in there. It's going to be tight. It's going to be really, really tight. It's going to be super interchangeable in the wild card. I'd love to hear what Tim and Matt have to say also.
Come on, I'll let you go for it, man.
All right, my 2 wildcard teams are actually going to be the Rangers and the Sabres.
Ew.
I'm an Isles guy, so obviously I'm going to take them over the Rangers in that 3rd spot. I think the Canes and Devils have that 1-2 locked up. This might just be a personal thing for me. Obviously, the Rangers have showed out in the regular season more, but I think the Isles somehow scrape a little bit past them. On the Sabres side, I have the Sabres over the Bruins. I think this is the time for them to step up. You just signed Dahlin today to that 8-year extension, $11 million. That's a Norris candidate for me. That's getting locked up. I think Owen Power takes a big step. I think JJ Peterka has a big year. Devin Levi's going to fill that goalie role for them. I think this is a team that, I would like to see their two-way game improve a little bit more. For me, they play fast, but their back check's a little weak at some points from what I've seen. So I think they take that step, and I think they finally break that barrier and get in.
Matt, your top or your wild card. My bad.
Yeah, wild card. So there's no sense in chucking up what we just did the whole first go around of me having the same exact answers. I think Buffalo. All right, we know that. All they needed was goaltending. Like, I don't think they need a bigger year out of specific players. I just think they needed the goalie. And you saw at the end of the year how friggin' of course against the Rangers, like Levi put up, he wins one game in a shootout, and the other game he takes us with 40 saves, and it takes overtime to beat them. I don't think they need a better year per se. I just think they needed a goalie. Now, New York Islanders, like Tim said before, their brand, their style, I was convinced when they won that one game against Carolina, like, if they can get in, like, with that style, they can just grind teams out to the very bitter end. It's going to be how they produce on the offensive side. So we'll see how that goes. Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh has potential to, like, take the division if like, their ceiling's up here and their floor is down here. Like, they could either really bottom out or they could be the best team in the Metro. And I really mean that when I say it. With Erik Karlsson, I think, like, that between the power play, and you can't go wrong with their core. It's Ottawa for me, and I know.
I don't blame you.
Listen, you got Jonas Korpisalo. They don't have the goaltending like we just mentioned with Buffalo, but Timmy Stew, like Brady Kachuk, their defense is loaded now. Sanderson, they got Vlad and Giroux. You have veteran presence in the top six, and they can still score. Vlad was great for the Rangers. I wouldn't say the best, right? Obviously, the best would be a cup ring, but he was great. Like, he was physical. He got into the mix of the play. He could set up line mates. He was a scorer. They bring him in. They might not have the goalkeeping, but the back end convinces me. The rear guards in Chychrun, Sanderson, like Shabbat. You got Shabbat healthy. I think Ottawa, of all teams, Buffalo to me isn't a surprise if you've been following for a few years. Like you said, Dan, like the casuals may not pick up on that, but if you've been following, like they're pretty much poised for a playoff year. I think the team that could take that last spot, like just get in, is Ottawa. And I think for the longest time, a lot of people thought it was going to be Detroit, but I think they've excelled further.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
So we're going to go to the West now.
Wild West.
The Wild West. Oh yeah, we're gonna start with the Central. I'm gonna start with mine. I think I like this top three. Number one in the Central. Give me the Dallas Stars.
Okay.
Number two, I got the Avalanche. Number three, this may come as a surprise. Give me the Nashville Predators.
Wow. Interesting pick. Okay, I need you to elaborate. I'm sure there's some UC Saros, Roman Josi propaganda that you're going to spew on me, but I'm going to listen.
Also, they got Ryan O'Reilly too. I mean, Barry Trotz did an amazing job. They bring in, as I mentioned before, Ryan O'Reilly. They bring in Gustav Nyquist, which already gives you a deep forward depth led by Philip Forsberg. Roman Josi is a top Norris candidate. UC Saros is a key is a top Vezina candidate. The thing that got me to put Nashville in the top three, Andrew Brunette. I think that was a home run hire for Barry Trotz in the Nashville Predators, and that's what's going to take us to that top three.
I love that you bring that up too, because coaching is big. I mean, we saw it with the Devils too and Lindy Ruff. I don't know how much of an impact he had on that locker room, but clearly biggest improvement in NHL history, 49 points. So coaching obviously makes a huge difference. The Central is an anomaly. I like Nashville. I think I've been a fan of Nashville. I like what they got going on there. I visited Nashville in 2017, so I kind of still have that, I guess if you want to call it visitor bias for me going over there. Yeah. But the Central, I don't know. The Central, I feel like, is Colorado's division to lose. Joe Sakic, that madman, he did it again. If you look at Valery Nichushkin and what he did prior to signing with the Avalanche, top 10 draft pick, guy who looked like his career was going in the dumps, and he comes to Colorado, has a career year, and he becomes a bona fide top 6 player. And if you look at their signings, you look at Ross Colton, you look at Jonathan Drouin, you look at Ryan Johansson, and even Miles Wood. I mean, all of those players could have career years next year with Colorado. They lost a bunch of, core guys. I'm not necessarily core guys, but guys that kind of filled their roster. To be specific, Evan Rodriguez was a big one. JT Comfort, a guy who was great for them. Dennis Morgan, Alex Newhook, just to name a few. But this is Colorado's division to lose. If they stay healthy, Mikko Rantanen plays a full year, which I can't see him playing 82 games. But even if he plays 80, 75 games, that would be massive for them. I just think Colorado.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing that made me put Dallas above Colorado if they stay healthy.
You praying on injuries?
I'm not praying on injuries. I'm just saying
a little bit.
Saying, I know they're. I think Landeskog's out for the year too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Is he I think that it might have come out, right? He's not going to play for the whole season. Let's do like a quick little search here. Avalanche Star will miss 2023. No, that was last year. He missed the season. Yeah. No, again, yeah. Gabriel Landeskog missed the entire 2023-24 season, undergoing surgery.
I know.
So yeah,
who was the guy that had the issue with the cops?
Oh, that was Nichushkin, but I think he's
that was Galchenyuk. No.
Oh, that was Galchenyuk too. Yeah.
Galchenyuk's gone. He's overseas now.
He's gone.
I thought Nichushkin just posted with a gun and did something. I don't know, but nothing crazy there. But I do like the Dallas pick. I think that they are one of the most well-rounded teams in the Western Conference. They added Matt Duchene, which is massive. They added Craig Smith, which is massive. They had Sam Steele, which is great for their bottom 6. And they only lost Max Domi and Luke Glendening. So you look at what they already had outside of the signing those guys. Miro Heiskanen, Tyler Seguin is still there. Jamie Benn, Jason Robertson,
Wyatt Johnson.
They're super well-rounded. Jake Ottinger too, and net Vezina candidates. So to see them winning the Central wouldn't be a surprise. To see Colorado not winning the Central is more of a surprise than to see Dallas winning the Central, if that makes sense.
Dallas only missed the Central by 1 point.
They did. You're right. They did.
I think what happened with Colorado last year is why the NHL playoff landscape shifted. And I think it might be different this year, but I think it's something we keep our eye on. And that's why a team like Florida, like we brought up a few teams that are in the mix, and it's so important now to keep your eye on the wild card because they lose to Seattle in Game 7. No one expected that. Everyone was like, Colorado back-to-back, like, here we go. And they lose in Game 7. It's a stunner. And then Florida defeats Toronto, defeats Tampa. Well, Tampa loses to Toronto. All of a sudden, the entire Atlantic shifts. Boston loses. Yep. It's like no one expected that. So I think, again, supporting the Avs number 1. I think, like you said, their division will lose. But I also think, in my mind, the reason I don't love predictions is because, like, I fully see why Dallas could also just flat out win the division and take it over Dallas. And then I think the third team in the Central's where the focus really is of, like, who takes that, because we have a Predators pick. I don't know what Tim and Jake's picks are. I want to know in a moment. Just I got the Wild, and the reason is just kind of the recency. Yeah, I think it's just the recency bias, right? Like, I'm not convinced with Nashville. I haven't heard great things, and I think from my view, I respect Dan's pick, though. I love a bold pick. But I think
you want to hear a bold pick, wait till we get to the wild card.
I just think Nashville is the team that's more heading towards a rebuild than a team that's heading into, like, all of a sudden we're going to compete now. I think with the Wild, it really comes down to, like, you have your talented guys, and I think what's going to happen is if the wheels fall off this season is where they're going to start to try and pick and build because you still have younger guys. So, like, you could kind of do a build on the fly with Kaprizov and Boldy. So, yeah, obviously they lost number 2, but the wild card is more important to the West to me because I feel like the Central and Pacific are, like, pretty much there's, like, 4 teams in each that are there. And then, obviously, today, friggin' the Jets signed Hellebuck and Scheifele, like, 20 minutes ago the twin contract. So
I was hoping nobody would say anything about the Winnipeg Jets so that I could put them as my number 3 team in the Central Division. Because Not only did they just sign 2 identical contracts this afternoon to their 2 best players in the NHL, not in the NHL, to the 2 best players on their team, but they arguably had one of the best trades of the offseason, getting rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois, and in comes Alex Iafallo, Rasmus Kupari, and Gabe Vilardi. So now you look at their roster, they already have Kyle Connor. They already have Nikolai Ehlers, who we all can pray stays healthy. They have one of the best seasons in Josh Morrissey last year, having a Norris-type season. They get Hellebuck, obviously back again for re-signing for the next, however, I think it was, 8 years? Crazy term. They're well-rounded. I love what they have on defense. I love what they have on offense. And I don't see any other team, like, yes, Minnesota, they're honestly a really good team to compete for the second or third spot in that division. They have Kaprizov, they have Zuccarello. They also lose Matt Dumba. They, lose a couple guys in the offseason that make you question what's going to happen in terms of filling it in. They're going to get Brock Faber, who played at Minnesota last year, had a couple games, I believe, for the Wild as well. Yeah, great player. They also have a really good goalie tandem in Minnesota as well with Gustafsson and Fleury. But I don't know. I'm high on Winnipeg. They only lose Blake Wheeler, Dubois, Dave Riddick, 3 guys who, had an impact, but were just okay last year. So I see a little bit of a faster team in Winnipeg. I see a lot of goals in Winnipeg, and I also see them locking down the back end. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're a 98, 97 point team this year. I like the Jets to make the playoffs. Bring the whiteout back. It's going to be a good season for them, I think.
I had Winnipeg money line that game.
Yeah.
Where
did Riddick go? Can anybody pull that out right now? Does anybody have a Dave Riddick landing spot, or is he still in free agency land?
I think he landed somewhere. I don't know though.
Not for sure.
Yeah.
Tim, what about 3 spies? Yeah. You said you had the Wild too, right?
I'm a Wild guy. I think I look at this team. I love their top 6. I think Joel Eriksson is a very underrated 2-way player. I think he's going to be up for the Selke this year. He's one of those 2-way centermen that just unbelievable with his stick defensively. Kirill Kaprizov does it for me. He's going to have a huge year. This guy's a stud. I love the way he plays. His edge work's unbelievable. It's really pretty to watch. And the connection that him and Zuccarello have is unbelievable. I mean, the way they work, especially in 3-on-3 overtime and the power play in, small areas. Marco Rossi, for me, is the question mark on that third line. Is he really going to step up and have a good year? I think he will. I like who he's playing with. He's projected to be with Frederick Gaudreau and Marcus Foligno. I think that's who they have him with. I think that line can be impactful for them. That might be what, puts them in that third spot, but I'm high on this team. I like what I see, and I've been back in the Minnesota Wild for a while. I think this is a year where they can maybe make some noise.
Finally win a series.
Yeah. It's been a long time.
I don't know if I go that far.
Here's my thing with the Wild. And Matt mentioned before how, like, every team has an elite winger. Like, they have Kirill Kaprizov. They have, what's his name, their goalie, Philip Gustafsson, at a possible Vezina candidate. Other than that, like, I know you mentioned Joel Eriksson Ek. What else?
Matthew Boldy's a stud. He's young. He's only getting better. You've seen progression from him through every game. What are you saying?
They're kind of just there. Like, I feel like they're just kind of just there. They're, like, middle of the pack. They're, like, nothing really, like, they don't really
I feel like that's a stigma they've had around them for way too long. I feel like people see the Minnesota Wild, they don't see them as a threat. They add some more sandpaper Pat Maroons on this team now. They get a guy that's, notorious for winning. Winning seems to follow him. But like Jake said, Brock Faber was a stud last year at Minnesota. And Brock Faber's a guy that can come in and kind of replace what Matt Dumba did. He moves the puck really well. He sees the ice really well. And their back end, some people might have a problem with, but I like Goligoski and Middleton as a second pair. I like this team. I like this Wild team. I like them a little bit more than the Winnipeg Jets. I can't get behind that pick entirely, Jake, because I don't. Because from what I saw from them last, I understand they got a different team. Yeah, I didn't.
The Jets. I'm with Tim here. And it's not about. There's a million people's opinions in this world. I just think I respect again a bold opinion. So I like to hear someone say the Jets. It's pretty cool to hear the reasoning behind it, but. For how good Gabe Vilardi is, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is a better player. And I know he's one, and now they've turned that into 3 players. But if he wasn't impactful with Scheifele, and at the time Wheeler, and at the time Connor, I don't know. I just feel like their depth is not there to compete, not only just to get there, but it's like,
But
all
to
right,
do
so they get
anything.
there. They lost to
I
Vegas, and I
mean,
know they won the cup, but they got kind of smoked.
Yeah,
I
it was.
guess
Yeah, it was in 5.
I don't.
Right?
And
I
think
don't.
about, I mean,
I
you
just,
think about the Ranger game to finish the year last year. It took 50 saves from Hellebuck to even give them a fighting chance. I don't
I
think
guess.
he could do that every game. I don't see it from them. I don't know.
Also,
I haven't
just
seen
I
it
don't
from them in a
know.
the
while.
way contract extensions go, I've always found if a free agent, like what Steven Stamkos just said, if it's already starting now, it's not a good sign. And I know they signed the contract, but I want to know by March and the trade deadline where those guys end up. I really do, because I don't know. Hellebuck, with his talents and teams that need goaltending, I would not be shocked if we see some big movement there.
Okay. All
I could
right.
see it. I mean, that's bold, but I
We're-
could see it.
We're gonna go to the Pacific. I will
Stan,
name
you
my
said you
top three.
had. You got to start,
It's in
bro.
the-
You said you had
It's
something
in the
cooking.
wild card. It's in the wild card. It's in the
Okay,
wild
all right,
card.
all
We
right.
get to the wild
So
card.
we'll.
My top
I
three
mean,
for the
I'll
Pacific.
start. I have mine that might be a little
All right,
off the
Tim- yeah,
rails.
Tim, go for
All
it.
right, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Okay. Tim, you.
I
you
actually
say
think the LA
I've
Kings
used
is the
bathroom.
number one team in this division.
Whoa.
I think the LA Kings are the one seed in this division.
Whoa.
I think this is the year we finally see Quentin Byfield take a step. Reportedly came out last year. He was playing the whole season with 2 sprained wrists. This guy was picked high for a reason. I think he's going to fit well with Kopitar and Kempe in that line, and you can finally see some skill from him because what I've seen hasn't been much. It's been a lot of physical corner play, nothing really showing off his talent. I think finally he can do that. You add Pierre-Luc Dubois, like Matt said, he, from as much as you could talk about him and, how poor his attitude was, especially in Columbus and Winnipeg, the guy's a stud. He's got skill. There's a reason he was drafted that high. And now you're pairing him with Kevin Fiala, who I think is a great goal scorer. They have Philip Deneau in that third-line center role. This might be one of the best center rooms in the league because I really do believe Kopitar is a Selke candidate. So you're looking at a top 6, top 3, center-wise, top 6 that looks unbelievable. The back end, Drew Doughty's healthy. Mikey Anderson's going to step up, play fine in that second role with him. I like Garyanov. I like Matt Roy. It's goaltending, obviously, is this, if Cam Talbot can hold it down. And I think he does. I really do. I'm high on this Kings team. I like the two-way game they play. I think they match up well with Edmonton. They match up well with Vegas. And I think it takes a lot of these division games and they solidify them as the number one team.
That's a great way to look at it. I mean, you could argue that they have the best center room in the NHL just based on how impactful they are on both sides of the ice. They have 2 bona fide Selke candidates in Kopitar and Philip Deneau. And you pair that with goal scoring, even if you get 20 goals from Quentin Byfield, you're going to get 25 plus from Kempe, Kopitar, Fiala, and Dubois. So there's 110 goals in your top 6 without the other right wing, whoever's going to play on that second line. So they're going to be really good. I love their third line, arguably one of the best in the league. Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau, Victor Arvidsson. They're just a really well-rounded team. That's why they're definitely a playoff team for sure. They're going to be in the mix. They lost a couple names in the back end, but I don't see that impacting them that much. They still have Drew Doughty. They still have Mikey Anderson in there. They added Gavrikov, who was shockingly one of the biggest trade chips last season during the deadline. A lot of people were.
I didn't think he was, just because I think that's what the league is starting to turn into. Is you have the talented guys. Every team is drafting talent, right? We just brought up Byfield and this guy. And all of a sudden, the most important players are, like you just mentioned, Trevor Moore, Deneau. Gavrikov was a guy that played so well in Columbus in the series against Tampa, the 5-game series in the bubble. He, I think, was a player that stuck out because it's oh my God, we need a guy that can play defense. And I think that's why teams admire that now. I think at the deadline, you haven't seen, you've seen some big movement before the deadline, but deadline day, I feel like you see more of a Max Domi get moved to Carolina, and then he puts up 2 goals in Game 7 against Boston 2 seasons ago. Those are the guys I think the league is starting to turn into.
You're not seeing any Shea Weber, PK Subban trades again.
No, and a lot of it is character too, right? A lot of these players that teams are looking for adds character, and it also is almost like a role model, right? There's a reason why the top end players in the NHL make up such a small percentage of the NHL. Yes, there's a lot of talent in the NHL, and we've said in this podcast alone in this episode that pretty much every single team in the NHL has that one winger or that one player who's really good. But there's a lot of players in the NHL that can't emulate that skill that a guy like Clayton Keller or Brad Marchand has. So when you bring in guys like Trevor Moore and you bring in guys like Victor Arvidsson, and you mentioned earlier another guy that Tampa has, Tanner Jeannot, where he's a guy who started in the ECHL, started out maybe guys in the AHL that, these kids now that are getting drafted can be like, okay, like this is a role that I could have. Maybe I could use my shot and maybe I could be very skilled, but also I can learn from a guy like Philip Deneau. I can learn from a guy like Carl Grunstrom. Like, hey, like you can make a living in the NHL by playing this way, not necessarily having to score 30, 40 goals, because it doesn't happen for everybody.
Yeah, and one more thing about the Kings, I think I look at what they have beyond the NHL, guys like Brant Clark, guys like Alex Turcotte, who haven't even risen to the NHL stage. This team's only going to get better. And I could see maybe a guy like Brant Clark or Alex Turcotte, if they do stay healthy, maybe getting a midseason call-up, give them a shot, because they both looked, and Alex Lafreniere, they all looked phenomenal in preseason. So I expect this team to be competitive through and through. And I think even if they deal with injuries, they have plugs that can fill that role.
Come on, Alex.
I think the Pacific is a little weird because it's a little top heavy, just considering the bottom of that division. I got to go with McDavid at the first seed in this division. They're actually my President's Trophy pick just because I think that offense is fully settling in. They've added a couple of pieces over the last couple of seasons. Evander Kane, Zach Hyman, Matthias Janmark just got added to that team. Connor Brown just got added to that team. Matt, you and I both know how much of a stud Connor Brown is. And Daily Faceoff is projecting him to play with Kane and McDavid. Would not be surprised if he's a 30-goal scorer. We're seeing Evan Bouchard get a ton of praise from Canadian media, which is not surprising. I mean, Canadian defensemen, they're going to hype him up. But their back end is looking much better. Their goaltending finally looks like Stuart Skinner, Jack Campbell can be like a little bit of a 50-50, maybe 60-40 split that'll get them through the regular season and get them into a position where they could have a ton of points. McDavid had, I believe, 156 points last year. Would not be surprised if he hits that and does even more. They're my pick for the Pacific and also my pick for the President's Trophy. They're going to tear it up in the regular season and hopefully more. I love Vegas. They did not add a single player in the offseason. They did not add anybody. So by not adding anybody, it was full subtraction. They had no money after, giving Eichel that, bring him onto the team. He's got that contract. They lose Riley Smith. They lose Teddy Bluger. They lose their backup Lauren Brossois. They lose Phil Kessel, and they lose Jonathan Quick as well. I love Vegas. They have a great roster. They're going to be second or first in that division. A lot of people think that they're going to be President's Trophy winners, which obviously wouldn't be surprising considering the talent that's on that roster. We're going to see Logan Thompson probably take a step forward and maybe fully take over that starting role. But I have them in second place in that division, and then I have LA in third. I love LA as a first in that division pick. I think it's very bold, but I also think it could definitely happen if that team gels and they really go flying in that division. So Edmonton, Vegas, LA is my Pacific.
Yeah, Jake, I have the same top.
I think. Oh, damn! What were you saying?
I mean, I have the same top three. It's Edmonton, Vegas, and LA.
Yeah, and
you basically said the same thing. I was going to say.
Yeah, I had the same thing too. I think just the only thing about LA, I have them at 3 as well. Just teams don't need to win the division to break out and be that team. If they're the third team in the division and they make it to the Western Conference Final, that's just as impressive as if Connor McDavid, drags the Oilers to a President's Trophy. And I think something to keep in mind.
Go ahead.
What's up, Jake?
That's the thing, though. Like the misconception with McDavid for years now has been he has to drag this team. Yes, Draisaitl there also.
He does, but I don't think Draisaitl
their roster now.
I don't think Draisaitl is the second best player in the league. It's Austin Matthews, and I think
it's McKinnon. It's Nathan McKinnon. But okay.
Oh, okay. We can't
get in this debate right now. It's going for hours.
we can go on with this for hours, but
my
Aaron just had 100 points.
Okay,
all right, whatever.
Matthew's in a down year too. I'm not. I'm just.
Where my problem is with the Oilers goaltending. I have them at 1. and I know we're talking regular season here, but postseason, they don't convince me with their like goaltending, and I just think that's like a I know I feel like the stigma is the wrong word because I believe in it. Like a goaltender can get you far, and I just don't see Stewart. Like I know we saw Aiden Hill, but let's be for real. Like Logan Thompson's in that, they probably don't even come. They probably the Vegas Golden Knights probably would steamroll out of the postseason if they had their true starter in net. I know Aiden Hill played really well, but
Okay.
I do think that we're talking about goalies, right? It's like you need a defenseman in depth. You need a star forward and gritty depth, and you need a goaltender. And I just think Edmonton, yeah, how many games do you see where it's like the Oilers won in overtime? Why didn't they close it out when they put up 5 goals? Because they also surrendered 5 goals. So I think that's more of a conversation for when we talk about Stanley Cup.
Okay. Wild card. So
I'm starting.
you're starting? Okay. Even with my big controversy?
Does anybody, little trivia question, does anybody remember my Stanley Cup pick last year?
The Calgary Flames. You have them in the wild card.
You're goddamn right. And they are in the wild card for so many different reasons. This team is so unbelievably talented. Like, just looking at their roster, yes, they lose Tyler Toffoli. They bring in Yegor Sharangovich, whatever. But looking at their roster, looking at their center depth, looking at who they actually have, this team is poised for a great regular season. They have Jacob Markstrom, who I think is one of the better goalies in the NHL. He was a couple years ago, he was the shutout leader. He can take teams and he can win games for them. I love their back end. I love Mackenzie Weegar back there. Their left side is one of the best in the NHL with Weegar, Hanifin, and Nikita Zadorov. Love that. Even the right side's good. Rasmus Anderson, Chris Tanev, Jordan Osterley, great. They're getting a rookie. A lot of you guys might know, any NCAA fans out there. Matt Coronado, projected to be in their top 6. He had a fantastic preseason. He's flying out there, looks really, really good. He's going to be a great guy out there with Mangiapane if he plays together with him. I'm expecting just that entire offense to go from where they were last year to take that step forward. You have Nazem Kadri there as well. So they're my wildcard team, as well as the Seattle Kraken. They're going to be good again. I love them, love their roster, love Philip Grubauer. Shout out to my boy Roy, if you're listening. I love the Kraken. I love what they've done with their team out of the expansion draft, who they've added, who they've drafted as well. Matty Beniers. Hopefully he'll have a 45 to 50-point season, maybe even more, which means that the Minnesota Wild are out. That is probably my most controversial take of the entire episode.
Oh, you haven't seen my second wildcard team.
The Minnesota Wild will be missing the playoffs in 2023-24. But Stan,
okay,
the floor is yours.
Okay, my first wildcard team, Seattle. I'm completely sold on Seattle. I love Matty Beniers. I love Jared McCann. I love Philip Grubauer. I think that Jordan Eberle as well
for free. Eli Tolvanen for free.
Yes, I think that they. I think that they bounce back off of the amazing year that they had last year. My second wildcard team.
Can I guess? Can I guess?
Canucks. I'm gonna, or the Coyotes. I'm gonna slap you because that's just wrong.
It could be it's either the Canucks. I could see it being St. Louis. That's another team.
Give me the Vancouver Canucks.
You're an idiot. You're just an idiot. You're an idiot.
I fucking love.
You know what? I want to listen. I want to listen.
For whatever reason, I love this team. I know last year was a disaster. They fire Bruce Boudreau. They trade Bo Horvat. I like Rick Tocchet, man. I really like Rick Tocchet. They improve the defense, getting Ian Cole. They get Ian Cole. Carson, how do you say his last name? Soucy. Yeah. Carson Soucy, Philip Hornick. Quinn Hughes was just named captain. They have a top 10 goalie tandem in the league, in my opinion, with Thatcher Demko and Casey DeSmith. And in order for them to even sneak into the playoffs, it all comes down to the play of Elias Pettersson. If he gets over 100 points this season, this team is going to the playoffs.
Nah, I can't. I can't get behind that.
Okay, let's hear. Well, I want to hear the anti. I want to hear Tim, because I'm not necessarily anti Canucks, but I I believe in Stan's pick, but I want to hear Tim because Tim is out on the Canucks.
I just think this is the same system over and over. Like every year, it's the same thing with the Canucks. Is that they kind of present the same core group, and it just doesn't work out. And I understand you bring it
from the Islanders then.
that we've made the playoffs. I'm talking about playoff aspect.
They won 2 rounds.
What, the Isles last year? Yeah, they lost the first round. That's fair. But what were the Canucks at? They were sellers at the deadline. They had 70 points. I mean, I don't even know if they were sniffing like a top 10 pick. I understand. I understand.
I think it's also. I do think the argument though of trotting out the same group, because I feel like that could be used on a lot of teams. Pittsburgh, the Rangers, the Islanders, Carolina for the most part.
Yeah,
like
you
it's
can
a
include
punting.
But here's the thing: if there's somewhat recent success of making the playoffs and having at least a push going in with going over a hump, especially with teams with young players, like you brought in JT Miller. There really wasn't anything. They haven't done anything. They haven't made the playoffs with the guys they brought in. They've extended all of them. And as much as I do like Quinn Hughes as a player and a captain, his two-way game is he's not great defensively. His plus minus has been So it's
all plus minus.
Again,
here we go.
Yeah,
here we
it's
go.
A stat that matters, and
It does
just as much as
that.
face-off percentage.
I did not think.
But
I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear any face-off percentage. But you know what? Actually, I didn't even look at the Canucks. I didn't even look. But I've been pulling up some daily face-off content here while we're live. I hate their left side. Kuzmenko, stud, love him. But after that, it's Phil DiGiuseppe, GOAT.
Ranger legend.
Dakota Joshua, and then Niels Amon. Not good on the left side. However, let's turn the page to the center depth and the right wing depth. Now, very good 1-2 punch. JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, center depth. Very good. They add Pius Suter and Teddy Bluger, who, in my opinion, very, very good 3-4 combo. Pius Suter had a really good rookie season with Chicago. I could see him having success on that third line with Beauvillier. And then looking at the right wing depth, I mean, Connor Garland, he scored 30 goals before. He's a good player. Brock Besser, hopefully he can return. I think Pettersson, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to have a great year, but he is not the X factor. It's their guys who have been there for a while. It's Brock Besser. It's Connor Garland. Those are the guys that they need to actually have good seasons in order for it to happen, because there's no doubt in my mind Elias Pettersson is a 40-goal scorer, 45 assists, and definitely even more. The ceiling for him is like 115 points. He's a stud. Everybody in the league knows it. And the only reason why I said Pettersson to the Rangers earlier in this episode is because I initially didn't even think about Vancouver and thought of them as sellers. But seeing the way that you put it, seeing the additions that they have, seeing the goaltending combo, there's no reason why they can't be a playoff contender.
At least in the hunt.
You know what? No, and I'll say this actually, where I disagree
I feel like that's been
over here, my guy. No, you know what though, guys? They have ingredients, and I think that's something that we've been talking about with the NHL. And I know I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the reason they didn't succeed at all last year wasn't because of anybody else. Brock Besser could suck. How many forward groups in the NHL have one player that sticks out like a sore thumb and you're like, why can't this player just figure it out? Every team we've talked about has one, and I could go back through the whole list and talk about it if you want me to.
Yeah.
But I won't, because I know we all...
We've already been at it for an hour and
whether
7
it's a
minutes.
defenseman, whether it's a forward. But guess what?
Josh Bailey's already gone.
You only play one goalie a night. And Thatcher Demko struggled mercilessly.
He did.
It was horrible to watch. But we know he has more in the tank. The reason they succeeded in the bubble was because of him, because of his play bouncing off of Markstrom. I think their goalie room, if they can get back to some sort of form, I don't see why they can't compete for a wild card, because I'm not sold on Seattle.
Oh. Who do you have?
Yeah, I think a lot of people see that Seattle can regress, which is fine. I mean, that's
Heavy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
he's your best forward.
Yeah, but like I'm telling their team though, like it reminds me very much of how LA was in that first time that they met up against Edmonton in that big playoff battle where it went to like 7 games.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah.
Wait, so Matt, who do
They're-
you have for
Kraken
wild
are a
card?
win
Yeah.
by committee team. The Kraken are a win by committee team. The only way this works out is if the same thing happened last year. Is they have multiple guys with 40 points. Everyone's producing. I think they
Correct.
could sneak in as that last wild card team. I need a jump.
Their team is genuinely like a bunch of like second, third liners. That's why they were successful last year.
I think the Kraken were two things. Win by committee to a degree. I think they came off of the expansion high.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I also think we talked about with someone else just brought someone up that just triggered something in my brain. Maybe they're the safe pick. They are the safe pick.
Really? The safe pick?
Well, I think they're the safe pick in the wild card because, yeah, they made the postseason last year, made noise, and none of us had them in the 1, 2, or 3 spot. So they're the safe pick in the wild card, but I do think the other teams we mentioned would have to make a jump in order, right? It's like Seattle's there, but if Calgary can make the jump, they can knock them out. Or if Vancouver can make a big jump, they can knock them out. I'm just not convinced on Seattle, and I think the other team, I wouldn't compare the two. I think St. Louis has a chance.
Yes.
And I think part of that is because I think they have some bona fide talent that's better. Like I'm more convinced on Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich and Jordan Binnington returning to any sort of form over. Seattle. There's something about they won Game 7. Like I feel like you can't get to that peak and then build upon it again. And I think their first season, I know it was their first season you're looking at right now, but that's their floor. Like you're talking about a forward group that's led by Jared McCann, a defense, and Ryan Donato. Like it's not winged by committee where it's like with the Islanders and Trott's system and the way Lou has everything set up is like they're just gonna drain the life out of you before you score a goal. You knew that. And that either works or it doesn't. And it's not because of this system. It's because of if you can score a few goals. If the Islanders can score a few goals, they could win a friggin' cup. And that was the problem last year.
Mm-hmm.
With the Kraken, I don't know. I'd like to hear someone would have to convince me because I'm just not sold on Grubauer as a starter. There's just a lot there that I feel like is questionable where it's like they had the high. Vegas brought in Pietrangelo, Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty. Like they didn't just go with the misfits. The Kraken are like, here's our misfits, and this is what we're gonna go with because we won a Game 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just so many
defending Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I know they were missing guys, but
yeah, it's the problem with Seattle is exactly how you mentioned it, where it's like how much further can they possibly go? And just looking at their roster, I just feel like they can outplay teams by deploying like really good players on like every shift. So, for example, when they play against other teams, when they have to put out a third or fourth line of either rookies or, older veterans, whatever, versus a team like Seattle, where if you're going against a third line matchup, it's essentially like playing a second line when you're playing against Eli Tolvanen, Yanni Gord, and Olivier Bjorkstrand. So you have this, almost Swiss Army knife. Yeah, you have this Swiss Army knife of options where you can put out any line in any situation and you're going to get that same hustle, that same work ethic from every line. And that's why I compare them to LA, because we saw that against Edmonton in the first round series that those two teams had battled, where no matter what line was on the ice for LA, it was almost like the same formula where the puck was getting in deep and they were flying to the puck. The D was pushing up on the blue line, and Grubauer really was never getting a ton of workload because the puck was always in the offensive zone. And yes, whenever teams like Edmonton had pressure on LA or teams like Colorado had pressure on Seattle, they were scoring goals, but the puck was constantly in the Seattle offensive zone in those playoff series. So looking at it from that point of view, that's the recipe for success, being able to stay on the puck and stay hungry, and that's how they're going to be able to get into the playoffs. But I do want to think about St. Louis for a second. Matt, I know you talked about it for a little bit, but how does everybody feel about St. Louis? Because I kind of want to transition into this whole teams that are right on the fringe, teams like St. Louis, teams like Seattle, teams like Minnesota, Winnipeg. There's just a lot of these teams that they need things to go right in order for them to go in the playoffs, but they also could go very, very wrong.
No, I agree. Here's where my take is on St. Louis. I'll wrap it up quick. I think they are changing the guard, right? Like you move Tarasenko and O'Reilly, and I think the guys that are there are really, really talented.
Jacob Vrana, to name one.
Vrana's there,
That's
and
fair.
like everywhere he
Kevin
seems
Hayes.
to go, he succeeds. He had some ups and downs.
They got Kevin Hayes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Kevin Hayes. You got Jordan Kyrou. The core which they set up, kind of like to spring out. I think it's going to be a little bit of kind of like a retool on the fly, but I think it's going to be, you got your dogs, Buchnevich, Kyrou, Thomas. Those guys are moving. You brought in some guys, Vrana Hayes. You have the defense. I don't think their defense is terrible, and I think they do have the goalie. Like, I think they have the goalie if he's mentally sane this year, and I really mean that.
That's really for me.
Yeah.
For me, that's where they don't get in. It's not. I mean, you've seen Bennington in 2019. He stepped up to the big plate. He was a great goalie. And, after he's got that contract, he doesn't look like an NHL starter by any means. And this was a guy they were talking like Vezina candidate caliber back, when they gave him that deal. And him and Carter Hart are kind of in a similar situation right now where, are they really going to be that guy? And, did they just have a hot start early? And he's the biggest question mark for me. I just don't see him having a standout, a stud year, a year where you can rely on him consistently. And, you lose Ville Husso. So I think I can't see them getting in.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Matt, your wild card was.
I had Seattle in there, but the more we were talking about it, the more I was like, I just don't see how Seattle's better than Calgary, and I don't see how the St. Louis Blues can't challenge Seattle. So I'm actually really going to go with, I think St. Louis and Calgary I'm favoring, and I think just because the Kraken are the safe pick, right? Why be that guy?
Yeah, that's true.
Now
Why be the guy who's going to hate?
Tim, your wild card is.
Well, I had the Flames and the Kraken, but Matt's really, I don't know. I'm kind of on his wave now. I'm really thinking this Kraken pick. It's for me, and now I'm thinking goaltending wise. I mean, you got to think their inaugural year. They weren't great defensively, but Grubauer was heroic. I mean, he was horrific. I mean, they didn't even end up playing him that often. He hasn't been as rock solid as I would like him to be. And for some reason, that Nashville pick is just looking at me, Stan. I kind of want the Flames and Nashville as my two wildcard teams here. I think that's what I'm looking at.
That's crazy. I can't get behind that.
I can't get behind
Tell me why St. Louis would shock everybody and be buyers at the deadline. Like, go after somebody big. Like, I could totally see that happening.
It's not going to shock me if Bennington's good. If Bennington's really good, if he's having a decent, exceptional season, then that wouldn't shock me at all.
I brought up Ottawa before. We brought up, and Dan brought it up, Tarasenko and Claude Giroux. What is the difference between Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas as your core? And granted, I'm not saying comparing the players. I'm just saying we're talking about Buchnevich, Kyrou, right? A Kevin Hayes who can kind of revive himself a little bit. He had a lot of family things going, like personal things going on. You have those guys. You have a pretty good defense. What's the difference between them and a team like Ottawa? You add two veterans at the deadline, Steven Stamkos wants out. Oh, we'll throw you the money. Come over here. We got it for you.
Yeah,
you don't think he's eyeing that up? I just think you can add veterans and plug them into that lineup, and automatically they become a team that's just like the other ones we talked about.
And that's a perfect reason, because you ever see that meme where it's like there's like two separate roads and like one road is really like evil and spooky and the other one's like sunshine and rainbows? The sunshine and rainbows for Ottawa is Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux, Batherson, Tarasenko. Sunshine and rainbows. But the dark, gross, gloomy side is the rest of their forward core, because it is the Belleville Senators. It is not great. Their center depth is Tim Stützle, and then it's Ridley Gregg, Rourke Chartier, and Mark Kastelik. It is rough. So you're right. You're absolutely right. If they plug in those holes, like let's say the first half of the season, they're surprising teams. They're winning these close games. They're winning 4-3 in overtime against like the Colorado Avalanche when they come visit Ottawa. They're getting points. They're maintaining, the playoff race early in the season. And they're like, okay, Matthew Joseph has 10 goals in 20 games. That's not going to happen. So we need to get somebody to fill that role, and they might do it. So I agree. Ottawa is one of those teams to look out for at the deadline that might, surprise some teams, get in, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. So we're going to go award predictions now. So we're going to go Hart, Vezina, Norris, Calder. I think that there's a no-doubter for the Hart and the Calder. So I have
I don't know about the Calder. I would take a.
I have McDavid winning the Hart, and then I have Connor Bedard winning the Calder.
Let's get these four out of the way. Hart Trophy, Art Ross, Ted Lindsay, Rocco Richard. Which Rocco Richard might be different, but I have McDavid all four. Hart Trophy, MVP. Art Ross, most points. Ted Lindsay is player voted MVP, right?
Yes.
And then Richard is most goals. Unless Matthews has a career run, or Ovechkin, or Kaprizov, Pasternak, anybody. I don't see anybody taking those four from McDavid. Robertson, good one too.
Yeah, Robo's definitely one.
I think if there's one of those four awards that you're going to take away from McDavid, it's going to be goals. But considering the way that he was getting to the front of the net last year, it's going to take, and I'm not even going to say the word, it's going to take something to happen to McDavid in order for any of those words to get taken away from him.
Okay.
Let's go to Vezina, because this is going to be probably our most controversial award pick here.
Actually, I think all three of the bottom, Vezina, Norris, and Calder will be. Let's get to it, though.
Okay. So for Vezina, Tim's going to like this one. I have Ilya Sorokin.
Okay.
No reason not to have him.
I just think it's his year. He's had 924 save percentage through 3 seasons. He's got I forget what his GAA even is, but
most shutouts in the league since I think 2021 or the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'll say? Sorry. You know what I'll say about Sorokin? To cut you off real fast, if Linus Ullmark had the season he had on the Islanders last year, Islanders finished the same. But if Sorokin had the exact same numbers, you put him on the Bruins team, that award is Sorokin's. If Sorokin has another career year, if Sorokin has another career year, 925, 213, bunch of shutouts, but the Islanders fall short of the playoffs, doesn't matter what he does. If the save percentage goals against, all the analytics are better on a guy who's on a playoff team, like maybe Alexander Georgiev, maybe Jake Ottinger, maybe a guy who's playing on a really good team who also has very similar numbers, they're going to give it to that guy. So the only way Sorokin takes that Vezina is if he pushes the Islanders into the playoffs.
Okay, so are you taking Sorokin for the Vezina, Jake, or?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Do you want my homer pick or do you want my actual pick?
Go with actual pick.
Actual pick because I have them making the
already
third
won
seed
in your mind.
Actual pick because I have them making the third spot in the Central is the Winnipeg Jets. I think Hellebuck, he's got the contract out of the way.
Okay.
I think he's really I can win you a game player. Just like a lot of goalies, I think he's my Vezina pick. Really flashy goalie, very underrated flashy goalie. He's been in the top 10 saves compilations for the past 5 years. He could absolutely have a stellar year. And he's my dark horse pick of the Vezina. I think the favorite right now, if you look on FanDuel, is UC Saros. And Dan, I don't know what you're thinking with Sorokin, but since you have Nashville making the playoffs, if they get in the playoffs, Saros is going to be minus 400 by the end of the year. So he is definitely a good pick. But look, Igor Shesterkin is so good that the Vezina, I don't know how he's not the favorite. I don't know how Vasilevsky's not the favorite. I don't know how Sorokin's not the favorite, but
Vasilevsky is going to be out for 2 months.
But he comes back and all of a sudden he's posting 10 wins out of 13 and he just
that's
starts falling out.
2 months. That's huge.
I guess. That's fair.
1 through 1.
That's a short sample size.
That's fair. Matt, hit me.
Vezina. Here we go.
My pick, Igor.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah, no brainer.
It was about with that is because I think he had it's so crazy because Igor had the third best season of all time, and then Ullmark surpassed that. The one thing I will say though is Sorokin's right there, and the reason I believe that is all the points Jake said, all the points you guys have been saying, and I think part of that too is just I do think if the team makes the playoffs, I don't think it's wrong for writers to vote and say, yeah, that goalie earned the award. And I think part of that has to do with the kind of the view of it. Cause Sorokin could put up these numbers, but if they don't make the playoffs, the Metro's tough, but like they could get into a wild card. If they don't get that, like if they put up 80 points, it's like, well, then you're looking at it and you're saying, well, he lost how many games then, right? Like there's got to be a point where you look at something and say, so, but I do think he's right there. I do think he's right there. And I think the reason I go with Igor is strictly because I think this year the mentality is different in the room. And I do think he's going to have a very similar season to the 2022 they had. And I think part of that too is because they're going to make it in the postseason, the best division in the league. Carolina, Freddie Anderson always goes down, right? Like you always kind of have like a little bit of a toss-up of who's in goal. And I think for New Jersey, their goalies are not winning the Vezina. So, and I think Saros is right there too, actually. But I'd love to see
if he's the favorite. I couldn't believe that he's the favorite for the Vezina.
If Saros can drag them to the postseason, oh my God, Dan, we would have to put this everywhere.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, forget it.
Now imagine if Vancouver makes it.
Well, then Demko. But then Demko would have.
Yeah, Demko would. It's got to be Demko.
Demko probably.
Yeah,
and you know what? Same thing for the Blues. Benning got to be in that conversation. The Blues are getting in there.
He could be, yeah. Well, and then another pick that I mentioned earlier today, actually, to one of my friends who then called me an idiot, was Jacob Markstrom, because he had a Vezina caliber season a couple of years ago when Calgary was really good. So if he posts another one of those shutout like loaded seasons,
he needs another 11 shutout season.
Yeah, I mean, if he does something like that, forget it.
All right. This one's going to be an interesting one. I like my pick here. I want to see what you guys think of it. My pick for the Norris Trophy. It's going to be Rasmus Dahlin. I love this pick.
I have him too. He's on my
I got him, so
Tim's got him too. Okay.
I did like candidates, and then I like bolded the one that I think's going to win, and he's not bolded, but he's in the top 3.
Now, I love Rasmus Dahlin to win the Norris here. They're Sabres team on the rise. We've been saying it. The casuals are going to be exposed to Buffalo Sabres hockey. He just got that contract. There's just like so much I love about this Buffalo Sabres team, and it's all going to be not solely because of Rasmus Dahlin, but he is definitely going to be the main reason why they go far. He's probably going to be he's already top 5 best defenseman in hockey. If he wins a Norris this year, he could definitely make his way up to top 3.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with you, Sin. I think, listen, it's going to be like a storybook season for the Sabres. If they do make the playoffs, 13 years? It's crazy for them. So the fact that he's leading them on the back end, he had his best year last year. I think he's going to take a step from that. His plus-minus was finally plus, and that's a huge stat for me, for anyone who knows that. He had 72 points in 78 games. I like where he's at. I think he keeps getting better. I think Tage Thompson has a big year. I think Dahlin's the Norris favorite for me.
For me, with Dahlin, if he scores one of those, like gets the puck from down low at the blue line, makes a move, does a spinorama, and like takes a wrist shot and goes top shelf, his Norris odds are going to go from like plus 800 to like plus 200.
Yes,
because he's one of those players where, like, especially for like any defender, we saw Adam Fox. Like, everyone knows about Adam Fox when in that Norris season that it could have been Makar, but the only reason I feel like he won the Norris is because he was so good with what he's already doing, which is the non-statistical plays where his IQ, the takeaways, whatever it may be, not the goals and the assists. But it was the minute he started doing the things that you're seeing in the highlight tapes and in the top 10 compilations is when you started to be like, okay, Adam Fox is like the Norris guy. So if Dahlin wins the Norris, it's going to be because he's going to be on the highlight reels and he's got all the points and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a great pick. But we can't not talk about Cale Makar. Like, I mean, come on. That's who I have bolded. And like, I know he's like the homer like favorite pick here, but there's a reason. Like, he is the best defenseman in the NHL.
Yeah, now I'm gonna go with a different guy, and the only reason is because a quote out of training camp was the Dallas Stars, Miro Heiskanen.
Miro,
he was asked about the Norris, and his response was he was kind of like, why am I not in that convo? I'm right there with these guys.
Yeah. Damn.
I feel like that's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. So I'm just going to go with that just because it would be pretty sick if he wins and like Dallas goes far in the postseason and then he takes home the Norris at the awards this year. So I think everything we're saying, though, is on point. Like, you have your perennial guys, and that's Makar, Fox, Hedman, Yossi. I think Hedman's starting to fall out of that a little bit. So is Yossi. But I think the next 2 guys up in that conversation are Dahlin at 3 or 2, really. Like, I would say he's right there with Fox, and then I think Heiskanen's in there too. So
Calder Trophy. I said Bedard. Matt kind of gave me a look. I can understand why.
It's a no-brainer.
There's a man in Arizona. There's a man in Arizona.
I know there's a man in Arizona. I know there's a specific goalie in Buffalo.
We have to think like the NHL writers and the people who are actually going to vote on it, right? If Logan Cooley has 45 points or 50 points this season and plays very, very good, it won't matter if Connor Bedard has 60. It won't matter. Connor Bedard is going to have 60, 65, 70 points this season. And even if Logan Cooley is right there next to him, it doesn't matter. Because Connor Bedard is going to score those 65, 70 points in a way cooler, more, hey, NHL fans, look what Connor Bedard is doing way that the Calder Trophy, it's a runaway. I mean, you can't even bet on someone to have Calder odds less than mine. I think it's plus 500 because Cooley's the second highest at like plus 800. It's unbelievable. I mean, this kid Connor Bedard, he is going to score. I already took his over at 67.5 points because all the NHL writers are projecting him to have 80 plus. So he is the Calder favorite, and it's not close.
Okay.
Tell me why he can't be a point per game player.
I agree with you, but I don't think he's going 80 plus as a rookie.
He could be a point per game player, but their goal differential is going to be horrendous. That team's going to be pathetic. And I think for my argument for Cooley is that I think if Arizona could maybe make a little bit of noise in the standings, I'm not saying make a playoff spot by any means, but kind of hover around that gap. And if he's putting up points with Keller, I see no problem. Him getting votes and potentially winning it. I don't know. That's just me.
Okay. Matt, who you got?
Okay.
All right. So I've seen two guys with my own two eyes. From
Drew Fortescue and Gabe Perreault.
And Gabe Perreault, baby. He is pretty dirty.
I know.
I'm going to go with, you know what? I like the Cooley conversation because I genuinely mean this. He was the best college hockey player I've ever seen.
Okay.
It's fair.
He was unbelievable.
Fair.
And then the goal he scored in Australia.
I know Lane Hudson was incredible, and he's a first year, and he's just going to take time to develop, and he's going to be insane. We'll see that eventually. But last year, right, Logan Cooley's speed, like, I can't even express it. It's like he transports up ice. He's in all three zones, and then he's gone. I'm going to say there's one more player that I think his pedigree is there, and I think this is why he could take it, and that's Adam Fantilli.
Okay.
Because I agree with Jake. The world is against the rest of the conversation. They want Bedard. The NHL wants Bedard. But where I'll disagree with Jake is what he brought up just now, and I'm agreeing with him here. The support in Chicago. I just don't think he's a player that's going to come in and you can't in the modern NHL. You can't come in and just do it all yourself.
There's no way.
But McDavid did. He literally did.
Yeah, he got hurt. He didn't even wait.
But look at the games that he actually played, and then look at the actual first full season that he had, right? And I get it, McDavid, yes. Oh my God, like he's like the greatest player to ever step on the ice. But tell me, Bedard, it can't even you have to at least look at.
We just brought up playoffs with every other candidate for every other trophy. So Devin Levi is in net. He puts up those numbers and goes all the way. You don't think he's in the Calder conversation?
He's in the conversation for sure.
Conversation, yes.
Oh, Javon Levy had a very good year. He had 30 wins. He had a great year. Oh, Connor Bedard had 75 points with 35 goals and.
But the team has 40 points.
Like how the writers are going to think here. Like, I know it's your opinion, but I feel like you have to, like what Jake said, you have to think like how the writers and the voters are going to think.
That's the thing.
The NHL is going to want to have Connor Bedard winning Rookie of the Year. There's no doubt in my mind.
I just don't think he has that much support around him.
Yeah, I don't either. I think I look at that bottom six. I'm disgusted.
He looks sick against his own team's third and fourth line players.
Who were horrendous.
Well, he's also. I mean, listen. Look, he's also going to be playing with Taylor Hall, and he's also going to be playing with Ryan Donato, who are players who can.
Playing with necessarily. It's also who he's playing against. He's not playing. He's playing against Cale Makar. He's not playing against friggin' Seth Jones on 3 years into that 8-year.
I just think that the world is going to watch the Chicago Blackhawks play, and I don't know when this episode's going out. That's up to you guys. They're going to watch him play the Penguins, and even if he doesn't have a goal, even if he doesn't have a point, people are going to be like, "Holy shit, what is that guy doing on the ice? Like how is he moving like that? How is he moving his hands like that?" And it's the same way with McDavid, right? Like how McDavid, the way that he crosses over, the way that he moves his hands.
But I see what you're saying, but I could also see a Jack Hughes kind of side of this, where he's not a bigger guy. He struggles to adapt to the NHL style of play in his first, few years, and then he starts to, get going. I'm not saying it's going to be to that extent, but I'm saying I could see a possibility where he's like a 35, 40 point getter, and he struggles a little bit in his first year. Because like Matt's saying, this supporting cast is really not good, and they don't have the defense or the goaltending to really be nowhere near a competitive team. I think if they struggle a lot, he's gonna, kind of have a trickle down effect and struggle with them.
Fair. That's fair.
I think he's putting up like 50, 60 easy. I think that's actually almost a no-brainer, but I do think that if you look at it, like if a goaltender like Levi performs and he plays really well, but he's also on a winning team and then they make the playoffs for the first time, are you going to go with Bedard at 60 to 70 points, or are you going to go with the goaltender with the 900 save percentage, 30 wins under his belt, and took the team to the playoffs? And I think it's going to be something that remains to be seen, because I think they're going to want Bedard. But I do think there is more competition than, I don't think he's necessarily the shoo-in from the observer standpoint. I think he's the shoo-in for the marketing department.
Understandable.
Okay. All right, here we go. Jake, I'm going to let you go first on this one. It's time for you to avenge yourself. Who is winning the Stanley Cup?
Well, obviously, I mean, as a Ranger fan, I would hope it's the Rangers. I think that's fair.
Yes.
But I know we didn't talk about Selke. It's an LA Kings player not named Anze Kopitar. I'll let you guys figure that out.
Philip Deneau.
This team, for me, has the skill, and now they have the Nathan MacKinnon. And it's not the Avalanche. Now they have the Nathan MacKinnon quote where it's, "I've been in the league for 9 years and I haven't won shit." Now you look, it's his
there we go
8th year in the NHL. He's fully grown into the greatest NHL player we've ever seen on the ice. The Edmonton Oilers are my Stanley Cup pick.
Who were they beating?
And in the Stanley Cup final, hopefully not the Rangers. No, if I had to pick a team from the East to go all the way,
Tampa.
Man, what a battle! What a battle it would be to see Edmonton and Toronto in the Stanley Cup final. What a battle! But no, I mean, I can't pick Carolina because they're just not that team to go all the way. I don't see them there. Stanley Cup out of the East. I mean, it's a tough pick. In order to save my ass and not say anybody out of the Metro, I'll probably go. I'm gonna go with Toronto. Yeah, I think that's a fair pick. I think that they can get over that hurdle that they ran into in Florida, where Florida was on that Cinderella run, and Edmonton, Toronto is definitely a very looking into the future Stanley Cup final pick.
You know what I think is so weird, though? I just want to say this on the Toronto point. I think what's so strange is Toronto went from a team for 8 years that was really 6 or 7. When are they going to get out of the first round? And they were like a meme.
Yeah.
And even in the reporting world, too. And then now they lose in the second round and they won 1 game. And now all of a sudden, all I'm seeing on the internet is Stanley Cup favorite. What did they do to earn that? Because they didn't really do much from the first round crap that was they're never going to win. And now all of a sudden it's I'm seeing everywhere. It's you open your phone, it's Stanley Cup pick Toronto. I just think it's weird. I don't get where that switch happened. I get they made the acquisitions in the offseason, but at the same time, they won a playoff round, yeah. But then everyone kind of clowned them for the second round loss because it was wow, you won in the first round. Ha ha. You didn't do anything else. And now, like, they're a cup. I don't know. I just think that's weird.
I think it's mindset, right? Don't you think it's kind of a little bit of mindset? Like, I think after that first round win, it was like, oh my God, we are the first Toronto Maple Leafs team to do this in so long. That it was like, it's almost like how Jack Hughes said in that one interview, like, we had so much, built up, drama and all this stuff after beating the Rangers that we were just gassed against this Carolina team.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at where Toronto is now, and that's my pick for the East Final if we're not going to talk about the boys in blue. Thinking about how they are as a full team and what their roster is, I feel like now it's like, okay, like, yeah, we know what it takes to get out of the first round, but we can't have that mindset anymore. We can't have the let's make the playoffs and win a round. We have to have that mindset of what is it going to take to go all the way. And so I feel like I could see them getting over that hurdle and getting through a couple rounds, but eventually just, I guess, running out of gas against Edmonton in the final.
All right, my Stanley Cup pick.
Non-Rangers.
Carolina. Give me the Carolina Hurricanes to beat the Dallas Stars.
No. Nobody wants that, bro. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
I just think it's their year. I think it's Carolina's
never their year. They're like the Leafs.
Yeah,
they've made the playoffs too many times and have gone far so many times. I just feel like this year's the year. The play of Aho and Jarvis is huge. Their defense was already great. They go get Dmitry Orlov. They make their great defense even better. On Dallas' side of things, Wyatt Johnson makes their forward depth deep. Matt Duchene makes it much deeper. Plus the goal, I'll say it. I'm a Jake Ottinger guy. I like Jake Ottinger.
We all are.
I think he bounces back. I think
he's got to step up this year.
He will.
I just think that, in all honesty, it comes down to coach. I just think Rod Brindamore is a better head coach than Pete DeBoer. So I'm going to go with the Hurricanes, probably in 6. I know Pete DeBoer is Mr. Game 7 and undefeated in Game 7, so I'm just going to take this. I'm going to go with the Hurricanes in 6 here.
Magno?
Yeah, Matt. I would say go for it.
Matt, Matt, you go first because mine's a little. So you go first.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the reason why is because I think like we sit here and I think we clown Jake for last year. I think there's like the answers. Like I'm actually totally see Dan's answer. I think what happens though in the playoffs is what we saw last year. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's probably going to be Avs Tampa again," and I was sweating all year, man. I'm like, wouldn't that just suck if we get this same cup final again? I do think what happens in the postseason is you get a team that could get in to the playoffs. Or like a Pittsburgh this year, they bring in Erik Karlsson, all of a sudden they're back. Last dance type thing. And suddenly the big dogs go down and now it's free game. It's anyone's cup final. And that's what happened last year. To be honest, I know Vegas was knocking on the door. And in the past, they've beat some big dogs and advanced, and made some deep runs. But I do think that's what happens. And obviously, I'm going to think it's the Rangers for all their reasons. And I do think that because I think if you're like that third team in the division, that's always a great soft spot to be in. It's like nobody counting us in, but we're in. I do think, though, there are a lot of narratives I could buy into. I do think, to some degree, it's like Edmonton, like you got the best players in the world. And now they're 26. Like, when's the point where it's like, all right, man, like you're not over the hill, but you're certainly like, when are you going to even, they didn't win a game in the conference final in 2022. Toronto Maple Leafs, you got Matthews, you got that whole narrative, which I just kind of debunked. I think you look at like Carolina, like you said, Dan, I'm all in on that boat too. Like they only got a few more years left. Only got a few years left. And the reason I say that is because it's like you have the system, but there's going to be a point where the players start getting disgruntled that they haven't won. You bring in some veterans that maybe you shouldn't. There's going to be a point, I think, with Carolina too, and I think it's going to start this season where it's like, hey, when we going to win? Because now we've been in it for 5 years. Like cup favorite for, 5 years, a contender. Dallas is another team, though. I don't know why. They just really fascinated me last year, and I could see them winning. Just because I think they have all the pieces. Okay. They have the veterans. They add another one in Matt Duchene for literally nothing. I do think part of me thinks that like they're right in a good spot because it's like they're just entering contention and they have that potential. I think teams, the further you get, the longer it's like, do they really got it? The Avalanche were the one team recently, and they were like a super team that won where they were looking at it for a while, and it took a long time to get there. So that's what I would say. Like, I do think out of all those narratives, like, I think there's more of a reason to believe the other teams won't win, and I think there's less to believe why Dallas wouldn't.
So you're going with Dallas here?
I'm going to go with Dallas here.
Okay, Tim. I mean, you sent me your thing.
Well, this is my pick at heart. I obviously want the Isles to win the cup, so I'm just gonna say that was my pick at heart.
Fair.
Going with my, going with my brain instead of my heart. I am so bought in on this LA Kings team. I'm not sure what it is.
Wow.
I'm not sure if it's center depth. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's my faith in Cam Talbot or Tom McLean. Being a good head coach for them. I haven't been winning the Jack Adams. But yeah, I do have the Kings winning the cup. I actually have them again. You're not gonna like this pick. I have them winning against Tampa. I look at Tampa as kind of like the Golden State Warriors team. 2 years ago that won that NBA Finals. I'm not saying they win, but I think they have that step back year. They retool, they reapproach, they take some time off, they get a little healthier, they come back. They're a team to be reckoned with, and I think that's what we're going to see in Tampa. But I do like this LA Kings team. I'm buying it in the center depth. I think they get this one done.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, before we wrap this up here, is that there's so many teams that have that, like, okay, this is how we can win the Stanley Cup. And that's what makes it so difficult, is that you have to pick 32 teams and you can only pick one.
It's the hardest trophy to win. It's why it's the hardest trophy to win in all sports. I mean, it's anyone's game.
So it's literally the one thing that makes it so, like, almost like gut-wrenching, just as a hockey fan, to pick one team. Because let's say, for example, if we all pick the Oilers, then that means all of our favorite teams have to lose. Then that means, that means everybody else has to lose, right? And in the NHL, it's not like, you just lose. No, it's you go out in the most heartbreaking, overtime, disgusting
every time.
fashion.
You either go out
horrible.
like heartbreaking, or you go out sad. Like it's just, there's no in between.
You're like, you have the chances of you being upset are so much higher than the chance of you being happy. And you only have, and as a hockey fan, let's say you win the cup, you only have that happiness for a few months until all your other friends that are different fans of different teams are like, yeah, here we go, buddy. Let's do it all over again. So that's the one thing that just makes this so difficult. And I'll stand by my.
So what you're getting at is being a sports fan sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's also, there's also a good end to it. I mean, think about it. The beauty of the NHL is you look at it's anyone's game. You go to the bubble. Look what the Habs did. I mean, no one expected Montreal to even make it to the Stanley Cup. That's the beauty of the sport. It can be mixed up every year, and I think this year is where we really see a shakeup in that Western Conference. And I'm so sold on this Kings team. I might get a jersey. I'm thinking Kopitar. It's their time.
If I wasn't a diehard Ranger fan, I would be rooting for an LA Tampa Cup final so much, because I just think that would be just such a disgusting Cup final that, like,
I'm tired of Tampa.
I'm not. I as much as I am. The only reason why I'm not tired of Tampa is because the only reason why I agree with you, Matt, is because the only way for Tampa to get to the Cup final is to play a Metro team, and that just stinks of Rangers Lightning again in the conference final.
But I'm just not sold on them anymore.
That's fair.
I think what's definitely going to happen, and we're kind of talking about it right now, is with the NHL, the variables that are involved, or something I've been talking about kind of this whole time, is like the Kraken winning Game 7. That's such a shock.
Yeah.
Florida Game 7, that was crazy.
Insane.
Everyone was like, Boston
screenshot.
By February, it was like Boston's winning the cup and everyone else should roll over and die.
Yep.
So I do agree with that 100%. And I think the variables stink, right, for anybody. But I do think, like, now we're at a point where there's so many good teams that it's more about, like, I don't think you're getting the separation anymore, where it was like, if there were a few good teams, they were good for a little while. Montreal from in 2014-15, Tampa when they went on the rise. Now all the teams have this talent. They have some depth. Now you have so many good teams. It's the equilibrium. We're getting back to the balance. And it's going to take a little bit more for a team to win than just like, yeah, we're super skilled. Well, guess what? So are the other 10 teams that are you're competing against or en route to the Stanley Cup. So in the 4 teams ahead of you. So yeah, that's what I would say. I think, like we all picked a team, but I could see why every one of those teams would win, and I could even see why teams outside of that would win.
Final thoughts.
I mean, what a
Hour
pod.
48. Yeah,
it is
great.
It is insane. I mean, you put all. I mean, dude, we could talk to trees if we wanted to. I mean, hockey is just, and that's just the beauty of the game that all of us love, is that there's just so much to talk about. We could talk for an hour and 48 minutes about a Western Conference team that none of us watch on a daily basis. And that's what I love about this sport, is that there's so many different narratives that you can go about with every team. And it just, doing these kind of podcasts, these season previews, it really kind of just gets me excited for the season and excited to learn more about all these different teams, about what directions they want to go in and what could happen. And it's the beauty of sports. I mean, we all love hockey for a reason. And I think that's the big thing.
gotta love.
Yeah,
sports.
this was great.
I'm big on the wave again of like, bro, let's make hockey physical again. Let's make it violent.
That's all I want to see.
My grandpa
But
That's a winning culture. That's a winning brand of hockey. It's a physical
game.
game.
Fights from the preseason? It was insane.
No,
There were so many fights in the preseason.
Whenever we're in the fam group chat, my grandpa texts me. And it's always when it's like when the Rangers were losing to Chicago and there was like Goodrow and Trouba and he threw that helmet.
Yeah.
My grandpa was like, "This is my type of game," and it gets me hyped every time. I'm like, bring it to me, man. I love it.
No, we need to see some hitting.
Teams go to the Cup final and they're so clean and they win and they're just so skilled. I like a dirty team. I like a Pat Maroon game, friggin' 7 overtime goal. I love it. You know what I said this year, Jake? I said this before, and this is the beauty of the game too. I know I'm going on a complete tangent. I said Tyler Pitlick scores a Game 7 overtime goal to send us to the Cup final. I'm forever hang it in the rafters.
Rafters. If I have a business one day, he's carte blanche.
Here,
carte blanche. But he might not play. This fucking Will Cooley guy. All of a sudden,
I know
he might not play.
I'm just saying, overall, you know, it's just like I didn't believe in the Islanders the 2 years they went to the conference final. Crazy.
Fair.
They were playing. They took Tampa to Game 7. That's the part I love. Everything we're saying right now, just like, you know, Jake, I know there was criticism last year on your Calgary pick. But, man, I was convinced, too. I'm like, why could they not win? And ironically, the team that everyone was like, got fleeced, their guy drags them to the Cup final. Like, that's the crazy part to me, is that the team on the other end of that trade actually was in it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, we talked for almost 2 hours, but I think we'll look back and again be like, wow, different time.
We suck. We'll look back. We suck.
LA Kings are going to be sellers at the deadline. I'm going to be looking back at this like a moron.
Great.
When you guys come back on in April when we preview the playoffs, we're just going to be all say to ourselves.
Well, we got to do trade deadline. That's like the one. The trade deadline one is. That's great.
The start of the 9-month marathon.
Let's go. And Predators, Lightning, Game 1. Who we taking? All right, let's go. Who we taking? Game 1.
Give me Nashville.
Nashville? Tim, what do we got?
I'm going to take Smashville, too. I think Lightning are going to slow it a little slow without Vasi.
Road victory. Yeah, I mean, no Vasilevsky, so it's definitely possible.
I want catfish on the ice.
Oh, that'd be dope. I think it's in Tampa, though, so I don't know.
It's in Tampa,
All right, and then the last thing, and I will lock it in tonight, need an anytime goal scorer pick. My pick, got to go with Braden Point.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that like short period, like a week, where you were just like putting out like anytime goal picks.
I was cooking, and that ledges elevator, man. I mean, I was cooking.
Brady Kachuk.
Yep.
There was another guy too. I forget.
Larkin on there too.
Larkin.
I got Braden Point. Who do we got? Who's scoring tomorrow?
Oh, Braden Point's definitely a good one.
It's such a tough question.
Forsberg. Maybe we can leave it up. We could leave it up to the audience if we're getting this one out tonight. You think Bedard scores tomorrow in Pittsburgh?
Yeah,
no, he didn't. He got his only goal in preseason was an empty netter. I think it takes him like 3 games to get one.
Wah. Okay.
Here's a good one. Give me William Karlsson.
That would be hard if he scored. Oh my lord! What team is he on?
He's on Vegas.
Is he still on Vegas?
Yeah.
Oh,
Shea Theodore. That's one. There you go. There's one.
That's another one too. Okay. All right. We might put a little parlay together tomorrow, but that's all I got.
Well, Seattle's getting shut out, so add that in there too.
Okay. Generational hater.
Yeah, take Grubauer's over and goals allowed.
Gents, it is always a pleasure. We are nearing 2 hours on this preview. I don't even know how Tim and I are going to do a first and second half of this episode.
Yeah.
Gents, it is always a pleasure with the two of you. I feel like Jimmy Butler in the bubble, where he's just like,
yeah, he's hanging
over.
Like
crazy enough, you say that. I was watching finals highlights from that series like maybe 3 hours ago.
Oh god,
it's a very good series.
Matt and Jake,
I don't even like basketball.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Fellas,
we'll see you guys.
Let's go Rangers.
Deadline time. Go Rangers.
Yes. Let's go, baby.
Whew.